Hey, what's going on, my friends, and welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, I'm going to talk about negative entities and how to deal with negative energy, negative entities, negative astral beings and attacks. Some people call this night terrors, sleep paralysis. It's a very unusual topic, but a lot of people going through a spiritual awakening find themselves in a very real situation where this is something they must contend with. And it can be very surprising, like, holy cow, is this actually a problem? And the answer for not a lot, but some of us, and including me in the past, is yes, it is a problem. And it's very unnerving because you know, if you're a somewhat sane person, that I can't just go to the authorities. I can't go to a doctor. I can't really, where do you go for help with this sort of spiritual and life crisis you're dealing with? So that's why I'm making this video, because it was a YouTube video about 10 years ago that finally helped me deal with this. And since a circumstance, which I'll tell you about later, I've dealt with many different types of negative experiences like this, and I've gained what I found to be kind of a unique perspective, where I see a lot of people thinking about this situation in a way that's very different than the way I happen to think about it. And I'll tell you what, whether I'm right or wrong, this sort of philosophy, you could say, this sort of perspective has allowed me to go from being completely, I would say, crippled by this type of circumstance to having pretty much no issues ever since. And I'm going to share it with you in case you're going through this, because I know if you're going through this, you'd like to solve it, and I get it. Now, before I get into the 4 or 5 things that you can do practically if you are going through this to pretty much squash it, deal with it, eliminate it from your life, I will initially share with you my sort of foundational perspective, which again is very different than what I see. And what I see a lot of people doing is being extremely on guard against the idea of randomly being picked on by all the different negative elements of the world, the archons, the negative beings, the negative aliens, and the negative entities that come in their dreams. A lot of people, in my opinion, give this reality way too much power, way too much authority, and they play the victim. And they go through life wondering, like, I hope I'm not one of the random folks that have to deal with this. I don't personally look at it like this, because I believe, as a lot of us do, I believe as well, that we create our own reality. And that every single thing I experience, from the good to the bad, is literally a projection of my own consciousness, including, why would I not include this sort of negative reality? Just like if I get a flat tire, I'll wonder, why did I attract this flat tire? Maybe I'm going too fast in my life. As an example, I have these negative entities. Why? And a way I heard it put very well, then I'll move on to the more practical advice for you, was from a guy named Bashar. A lot of you probably know Bashar. He's one of the best channelers in the world, currently anyway. And I was watching one of his many workshops, and a lot of the things Bashar does, he's like he's an alien rather, that comes through and is channeled through this guy named Anka. And anyway, it was like during one of the lessons, and a woman came up with a question. The question was like, Bashar, how do I deal with these negative entities that are picking on me in my dream time? And she said, Bashar, listen, I actually woke up one time with scratches on my arm. And she was probably expecting Bashar to be like, oh, what's going on? And Bashar said, He said, why are you scratching yourself? And he was not implying that she just scratched herself. What he went on to say is that whenever we have this type of thing, they are literally reflecting how we are treating ourselves. If we have a lot of fear, in my experience, that's one of the things that tends to cause these like negative teachers to come in and be reflections, to reflect the unnecessary amount of fear we're going through life with. Or sometimes is an extreme lack of self-love, where we're really just hard on ourselves so much to the point where we attract a circumstance like this to reflect us scratching ourselves. And that leads me to my first piece of advice. Again, this is not going to resonate with everybody. Some of you might have a very different perspective and therefore a very different route you'll want to take or feel guided to take to deal with it. This is what worked for me. And it came down to me taking responsibility. Understanding that regardless of what's going on in my life, including the negative entities of all types, whether they're in my dreams or even in my waking consciousness, which I've dealt with both, I attracted that. I am responsible for this. I'm not a victim. It's not random. And when I take responsibility, then I can do something about it. Then I can ask myself, why have I attracted this? And what happened to me the very first time I dealt with this was very early on in my awakening, like a lot of you maybe, I came into a lot of information about the nature of reality very, very quickly. And as exhilarating as it was and mind expanding as it was also kind of like paralleled with a terror, like, holy crap, like I have to like reevaluate my entire sort of worldview, beyond the world. Like my view of reality is completely crumbling before my eyes. And even though it's all ringing true, it's just like, it provoked for me, long story short, a lot of fear, just a lot of fear, like this existential type of fear. And at that time is when I started to deal with what I would best describe as like negative entities. And for me, what it was in my dream time. I went through like maybe a short period of my life where every single time I fell asleep, I would not really sleep. It would become a lucid dream. And every single time that would happen, negative entities would come into the dream and terrorize me in some form or another. They would pick on me. They would just scare the crap out of me. They were very like demonic and like hideous and ghoulish looking. And I went for like many days in a row where I was terrified to go to sleep, because it wasn't once in a while, it was every time I fell asleep, these negative entities would come. And sometimes I'd even deal with what I call a false wake up, where I eventually learned to wake myself up out of these dreams. And sometimes what would happen is I would wake myself up out of the dream and I'd be like in my room, and there's another negative entity there because I haven't really woken up. The dream took on the landscape of my room. So it was like, it became very trippy. I was sleep deprived. I didn't know if I was sleeping or awake. I thought I was losing my mind. I didn't know what to do. And because I had all this fear and this disempowered sort of mindset of why is this happening? When will it stop? Why me? It just exponentialized. It got so out of hand because I wasn't taking responsibility. And my part in it, as I said, was I had so much fear and it was being reflected in this way. The second piece of advice is don't give it too much power. I see so many people, and again, I see my younger self in them as well, giving this reality so much of their attention, so much of their focus, so much of their power. It reminds me of people who, watch the news too much. And then all of a sudden they're looking over their shoulder, they're freaked out. And meanwhile, it's like birds are chirping outside of their window and there's the neighbor cutting the lawn, it's a sunny day, and they're freaked out because they spent so much time charging their body up with all of this energy, all of this fear, all of this anxiety that they're traumatizing themselves. Now, I would also do this again with like the negative entities where I was just obsessing about them. I was reading about them, I was thinking about them, I was worrying about them, and consequently, it was like these like negative thought forms, negative energy, whatever you want to call them, they were like built up into this like inflated, like a puffer fish, this monstrous state fueled with my choice to give them all this attention and power. And then what happened, one of the ways I started to actually break free of this, it was in the middle of one of my dreams. It was one of my false wake up dreams where I was in my room. I thought I was awake, and then I kind of looked around and realized I was still dreaming. And I was like kind of waiting for the ball to drop. And sure enough, it did. And a negative entity came right into my room. And instead of like, freaking out and trying to wake myself up, I got up out of my bed and I looked at it. I was like, what? You're gonna intrude on my room, punk? What's up? And I kind of like looked at it with that type of energy. And you know what happened? It got afraid of me and ran away. It literally, I saw it. And the way it ran away was in this very like gumpy, sort of frumpy, almost pathetic, sad way. When I realized this monstrous, scary, negative entity was sort of like a sad, lonely thing that wanted to get away from me. Once I gave it a second look, once I stopped fueling it and blowing it up with my attention and my fear, I realized that it's not that big of a deal. In fact, I actually have come to feel bad for them. If they are in fact real, I don't know, I can't say that, or merely just projections of my own fears, I don't know. But if they are real, if they do have their own consciousness, I feel like they have just lived some crazy, tough life or something, and they've put themselves into this extremely disempowered sort of circumstance where they got to feed on humans or something, and my heart goes out to them because that's no way to live. Number 3, and this is something that, it may trigger some people because of the connotation with the word, but what I've done in other circumstances is pray, believe it or not, like pray to God, pray to Jesus, and trust. Because I know there are degrees of dealing with this. And what I described is kind of inconvenient, and it was extremely scary for me, but I know there are more challenging types of versions of this story that many people, perhaps watching this video, are dealing with. And one that I sort of witnessed anyway was, this is gonna sound kind of crazy, but I literally witnessed what I would best describe as an exorcism. It was like an exorcism where this one nice woman we were working with all of a sudden became like just literally possessed. And like you'd see her, like her essence and her eyes just fade, and something else took over. And my wife and some of our crew had to all night pretty much work on this person, doing their kind of intuitive healing, and they're like energy healers, all the people working on them. And it was very, very scary. The whole room was filled with this like darkness, this demonic, fearful type of energy. And what was really crazy is when she would there were times where she would kind of come to and be like, what's going on? Help, help. And then she'd be back in it. And at that time, it was like we all on that night who were there. And I wouldn't believe it if I didn't see it. So if you're like skeptical, I get it. I would be too, but I was there, so I know. It was like we all got to look like evil right in the face, is the best way I would describe it. And at that time, we were praying. There was no Bible around, but we were like literally, me and my friend who didn't really know, we couldn't really help. We were just sort of there observing. We were praying, and we were like, I really realized that sometimes life does bring you to your knees, and it's okay to like genuinely ask for help. And what ended up happening was the young woman came out of it beautifully, and everything worked out magically, and now she's doing phenomenal. But anyway, I had to pray and I had to trust, and it did work out, and it did seem like higher forces were with us, even though at the time it seemed as if they were not allowed in to help. I believe they were kind of, I would say they were kind of like keeping an eye on the whole thing, and maybe even had a role in its resolution. And even going back to my very first circumstance, I didn't really do this. I didn't really pray or anything like that, but I had some external help. One of it was finding a YouTube video that told me exactly like something that clicked with me, that worked. And then also I saw a psychic, and he recommended saging myself. And for whatever reason, something as simple as that, I didn't know much about sage, but because I trusted this person and I believed the sage would work, it seemed to work. And the reason I'm saying this is sometimes we can feel very powerless, even though you might agree like mentally with everything I'm saying, you still might find yourself very afraid and very concerned. And that's when I say it's a good opportunity to ask for help. You might be surprised at how much help is available when you actually bring yourself to ask. And that's a big lesson right there. A lot of people don't feel like they deserve to ask for help, or they're weak if they ask for help. But asking for help is a very powerful spiritual exercise. And there's a whole lesson right there. You might find yourself sort of intuitively drawn to whatever permission slip will work for you, and it'll be different for everybody. And number 4, learn from it. This is just me, I look at these negative beings as teachers. Very, very powerful teachers. And I'm afraid that people who play the victim too much, give them too much power, give them too much attention, try to find some sort of remedy without taking responsibility for their own manifestation, they miss the whole point. You can learn a lot. In fact, the exorcism thing, it was a huge, huge lesson for me. And it happened, honestly, at one of my retreats. It was like at night when everyone went to bed, something was triggered in this person. And what I learned from that is that we were playing with power that we didn't understand. And ever since that night, all the crew had sort of humbled themselves and realized that we need to be extra mindful, extra careful in the way, in like the depths we bring people into. And again, it worked out perfectly. But the point is, it was a very humbling experience. It was like life saying, if you're gonna bring people through this big process, you better damn well know what you're doing. You better know what you're playing with. You better know what can happen. You better know that it's not smart to let your ego get inflated because you're sort of facilitating an extremely powerful experience. And I see this with other sort of organizations and sort of healing situations where people get kind of inflated because they're the one helping people heal. And I've been there, and I was too, to an extent, apparently. But anyway, that taught me to be very careful in that situation. And ever since, we have had very, very smooth but deep retreat experience. Anyway, that's my own personal lesson. That's the point of that. And going back to that past story I shared, the lesson was don't be so afraid all the time. Come into your power. Come into your power. So if you are going through this, I would ask you, what could you be learning from this? What could this be reflecting for you? So anyways, my friends, I know I kind of bounced around quite a bit. It's kind of a complex topic, and this only scratched the surface. And I also want to say that I don't know everything about this. There are people that are far more educated and experienced with this. There are people that deal with this every day. This is literally just my perspective. And I say it because I've just seen so many people totally, where their entire life has become preoccupied with this big problem. And I believe sort of the general perspective and mindset I shared is the root of why these problems can get so big and last so long. I think it's a lot faster of a fix. I think it's a way to learn and to heal and to grow like any other challenge we encounter here on earth. I think it's an opportunity to come into our power, to love ourselves more, and just to kind of understand the many different facets of reality. So we have that for our own general wisdom and appreciation for the good times in life. So I found my encounters with this negative realm, you could say, to always catalyze massive improvements in my life, massive bursts of spiritual growth, and just a coming into my power and love. And I am thankful for them. I don't shy away from them. I'm not on guard against them. I don't protect myself against it. I welcome it. If it comes into my life, I know there's a worthwhile lesson that's going to benefit me from this point forward on into the rest of my life. So that's just me. That's just me. I encourage you to have your own perspective, my friends. Have an amazing day. Talk to you soon in probably a more grounded and normal video. This is kind of an out there one, but I felt guided to share it, so I hope it serves you. Have an amazing day, my friends. Much love.